The study session for the Aurora City Council for Monday, August 7, 2023 is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Kaufman?
Here.
Councilmember Bergen?
Here.
Councilmember Coombs?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Gardner?
Here.
Councilmember Drinsky?
Here.
Councilmember Lawson?
Here.
Councilmember Marcano?
Present.
Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Councilmember Mario?
Present.
Councilmember Sundberg?
Here.
And Councilmember Zvonek.
Present.
There's a quorum.
There's no mayor's update. Are there any issue updates?
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to check in. I've had some calls throughout the day about a meeting that was held regarding the marijuana funds. I know in our Horns meeting, we were told that there has been a decrease in the sales tax receipts for marijuana, but there was nothing specific about cutting particular programs. And so I just wanted to get an idea from staff. Are specific programs being targeted for specific cuts at this time?
Yeah.
Councilmember Coombs, this is Roberto. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes.
so yeah, you are correct. There has been a significant decrease. Obviously, in the pandemic, we had quite a bit of retail recreational spend there in the north of $3 million. Prior to that, we were probably in the $1.5 million range to $2 million in tax collections on marijuana. And so we're back down to that in terms of our forecasting, which should be around $1.5 million for 2024, given that those numbers have come down. We don't have COVID money anymore as well. And a lot of the recreational spend on marijuana has gone down significantly. So there was no specific targeting of any programs as much as it was a determination, because we only had a certain amount of revenue that was available as a result of the decrease, that in the RFP for 2024, so not right away, but, and this RFP has not been issued also, by the way, but in the RFP for 2024, we would have a smaller pie essentially to distribute to service providers, short of having any other discussions with council about additional revenue for those programs. The 2% for marijuana, that's a formula, right? So we were only seeing about $1.5 million for 2024 projected. That would mean some distribution of cuts for all the service providers, not any one in particular, not any program in particular, but we would work with each of them to make sure that we're meeting essential services and meeting the commitments there. And we would be back to council to talk about, those implications for those funding. I wouldn't say decreases, because we're really going back to the pre-pandemic levels. That's really kind of where we were at in 2019. And so we were kind of inflated just because of the amount of retail sales that we got during the pandemic, but we've kind of gone back to normal sizes, so our normal revenue projections. So to answer your question, no specific programs were targeted, no specific or agencies. It was a general meeting to talk about what an RFP would look like and the revenue implications that we were seeing in the marijuana fund in 2024.
Mayor?
Councilmember Coombs.
So to clarify, there aren't any specific programs identified for cuts at this time?
It would be up to each provider to request the funding, and we would work with them on what categories that their programs would be eligible for, and they would make a determination on what services they would want funding, understanding that we only have a certain amount. So it wasn't any specific. If a service provider decided, well, I wouldn't be able to do that program if there was less money, so I'm going to make a determination that I want to not fund that program, then that would be a choice that they make. But we would work with them if it was an essential service like cold weather outreach, those types of things, to understand and make sure that those essential services were met. But yeah, those would be decisions that a service provider would make in terms of, okay, well, maybe I can't get the entire funding that I had in 2023, so I'll have to prioritize these programs and work with the city on what that would look like as part of the RFP response.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Sundberg.
Mayor Drinsky.
Councilmember Sundberg, then Councilmember Drinsky.
Mayor, I think it might be good to hear from an industry rep or two in the marijuana industry. I've heard in the last couple of months that business, the industry is really struggling. You know, that golden goose has been taxed to the extreme, and they're having to lay people off pretty severely. Minimum wage is a factor. It'd probably be good to just hear from some people as to what they're facing.
Let's see,
Mayor Jurenski.
was- okay, yeah, just wait, yeah, who on staff? Who's our marijuana person now on staff?
Mayor, we work that through taxes and licensing, so it would be Trevor Vaughn.
Is it,
On the call on another issue.
okay, would Trevor Baum be the one to give a presentation, or do we need,
Sure,
okay.
we can bring back Trevor.
Is
and
he,
have some
so he's
interesting-
on top of the numbers, okay.
Sure.
But I think, Councilmember Summer would like somebody from the private sector as well, am I correct?
We will do-
Yes,
we will
please.
do that.
Okay. Very well, Councilmember Jurenski.
Yeah, thank you. Roberto, were you in the meeting this morning?
I was not.
Oh, who is anybody on that was in the meeting this morning?
Councilmember Drinsky, this is Jessica Prosser. I was not in the meeting, but I have had subsequent conversations. And so to Councilmember Coombs's question, what is being proposed? And
Well,
we
can I
have
ask my question?
Oh,
I would like to ask
sure.
my
I was
question.
just going to
It's very specific.
clarify.
Very
Go ahead.
specific. I would just like to know, and I want to find out from somebody who was in the meeting, if at any point Councilmember Zabonic and I were directly blamed for this funding cut. I want to know that.
I can't answer that specifically. I have the recording and I'm happy to look at it. The funding reduction is related to marijuana revenue. So
I know.
we're going less, and then we are also looking at not duplicating services in the community, and we're also looking at the implementation of the camping ordinance. And so nothing is intended to be changed related to cold weather sheltering at all. We're looking to create some efficiencies related to street outreach, visiting people that are currently living in encampments.
Thank you.
Further questions to staff? Very well, okay, item number 3A, neighborhood park name for Green Valley Ranch East, PA 13, Kurt, Bish.
Mayor, point of order. Did we skip the consent calendar?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we did, okay, is there any objection to moving the consent calendar forward, item number 2A, 2B, 2C? Seeing none, the consent calendar will move forward. Item number 3A, neighborhood park name for Green Valley Ranch East, PA 13, Kurt Bish, planning supervisor, Park Pros.
Yes, good evening. My name is Kurt Bish, and I'm a planning supervisor in the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department. This item on the agenda is to consider a name for a future park in the Green Valley Ranch East development. Next slide. In Aurora, developers can choose how required neighborhood parks are to be constructed, owned, and maintained. For example, they can decide to construct the park and then turn it over to the city to own and maintain. Next slide. A park currently identified only as Planning Area 13 will be constructed by the developer Oakwood Homes. This slide shows the park in red, which is centrally located within Green Valley Ranch East, which is outlined by the yellow line. Next slide. As we zoom in a little closer to this development, this slide shows that the park is located near another park named Windy Plumes Park, which City Council took action to officially name last year. These two parks are separated by a drainage corridor, and the parks will be connected by a pedestrian bridge. Next slide. As we take an even closer look at this site, the proposed use for the park is focusing on passive recreation with trails that meander through the site. Next slide. Rather than continuing to refer to this park as Planning Area 13, action must be taken to officially name it. In accordance with city policy, ideas for a name were submitted by the developer to the city and then run past the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board as well as the Parks Foundation and Quality of Life Policy Committee for their consideration. Next slide. Wander Park was recommended as the name because the design of the park will encourage visitors to casually wander through it. The board and the policy committee are both in support of this proposed name. Next slide. So the question before you this evening is, does City Council wish to advance Wander Park as the name for Green Valley Ranch East PA 13 Neighborhood Park for consideration at a standard City Council meeting?
Questions of staff? Is there any opposition to the recommendation of naming the park? Seeing none, item number 3A will move forward. Item number 3B, 2023 IT Lease Purchase Authority. Scott Newman, Chief Information Officer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Scott Newman, Chief Information Officer. For the last several years, on the recommendation of outside bond counsel, we have initiated a request for an ordinance that allows IT to enter into lease purchase agreements. This is to satisfy certain IRS tax requirements related to tax deferred payments on leases. So this is simply another renewal of the same lease that we executed, the same ordinance that we executed last year, and just gives us the authority to proceed with leases between now and the next year when we renew it again. And I open up to any questions.
Questions of staff? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm sorry, and the action item is?
We do need to take this forward, sir, to regular council for adoption.
Okay. Is there any objection to moving item 3B forward? Seeing none, item 3B will move forward. Item number 3C, intergovernmental agreement with Arapahoe County for the 2023 coordinated election. Katie Rodriguez, City Clerk.
Yes, Mayor and council members. Item 3C, D, and E are all intergovernmental agreements with the counties to conduct the coordinated election for 2023. And these IGAs just include the responsibilities between the county and the city for the conduct of the election.
Questions of staff? Seeing none, is there any objection to moving item number 3C, 3D, and 3E forward? Seeing none, item number 3C, 3D, and 3E will move forward. Item number 5A, Colorado Municipal League Policy Committee appointment. Confirmation, Liz Rogers, intergovernmental.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Liz Rogers, Intergovernmental Relations Manager. The Colorado Municipal League, of which the City of Aurora is a member, holds a standing policy committee that develops CML's legislative agenda. The membership is composed of representatives from each member municipality, CML sections, and district presidents. In previous years, Council Member Angela Lawson has represented the City of Aurora on the CML Policy Committee. The question before Council is, does City Council approve the reappointment of Councilmember Lawson on the CML Policy Committee?
Discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any opposition to moving 5A forward? Seeing none, 5A will move forward. 5B, opposing strong mayor form of government. Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you, Mayor. This resolution, as the title implies, is the city taking an official stance in opposition to the Strong Mayor ballot initiative that may make the ballot this November. With the change to our rules, we're now able to take positions on these with a simple majority. So I put this forward so that all of us who were standing on the steps of City Hall a few months ago could do just that.
Is there anybody opposed to moving item number 5B forward?
I just have a question.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, I don't understand why this is coming forward again when we had a resolution by Mayor Pro Tem Gardner that, I mean, it's basically the same. It said we, as a council, support the city manager form of government. And now this one is just saying the opposite, but the same thing, that we oppose strong mayor.
Mayor.
I just don't know if we're wasting staff's time doing resolutions.
Councilmember McConnell.
Thank you. I don't think it's a waste of staff time. I think that supporting one form of government and taking an opposition against a specific measure, especially for the reasons in the recitals, I think it's important that the public understand that we are united in doing so. And this is an opportunity for us to take that stance.
Further questions or comments?
Okay, so I just need a clarifying question.
Oh.
Sorry, Mayor.
Councilmember Bergen.
So yours is different because it's opposing not just the strong mayor form of government, but the petition?
The specific initiative that the mayor has funded, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All those in support? Councilmember Murillo?
You ask a question?
Oh, Councilmember Summer.
Thank you. I just want to play devil's advocate here. I wasn't crazy about the term limit thing when I first saw that, but this is working in some other municipalities, right? The Springs adopted it. Denver runs it. Just for the sake of discussion and an understanding of both sides, what would proponents say that, or how this would benefit our city? Is anybody, what would the other side say, Councilmember Marcano, as to why this is a good idea?
I mean, you have one of the prime sponsors of this on council, so they can speak up for it if they like.
Nobody's willing to, just for the sake of understanding.
Sure.
Yeah.
This hasn't been debated at all amongst us or discussed. It's just people forming their opinions very quickly. I was just wondering, for the sake of the public, even listening right now.
Mm-hmm. So are you asking the mayor to speak for his
How about
proposal?
anyone
Okay.
willing?
I think having an elected official who's accountable directly to the people, that can have a vision for the city in terms of the direction. I think the development of the budget, there is so much policy involved in the budget that it really ought to be an elected official that does that. And I think there's an extra check and balance by having veto authority over the decisions made by council, but at the same time, there's a check and balances because council at any time with merely 6 votes can refer all or part of the initiative back to the voters for reconsideration, as Denver did. I think I'm trying to remember the year they did it. But they took away the mayor's unilateral appointment authority and required consent from the council for that. So I think we're the 51st largest city in America, and we have the urban challenges of race, poverty, and crime. And I think it's time to make a change.
Mayor Gardner.
Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you. So a couple things. First of all, the size of the city is not in any way relevant to the structure of government. Some of the largest cities in America, including Dallas, the 4th largest city in the U.S., Phoenix, San Jose, Charlotte, are all city manager forms of government. Some of the most corruptly run cities in the U.S., including New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago, are strong mayor cities. So there really is no relevance in terms of the size of the city. And, as the mayor pointed out, Denver is actually moving in the opposite direction and taking away power from their strong mayor, including requiring council approval of mayoral appointees. The voters passed that. I think it's also worth pointing out that in, at least a dozen ways, perhaps more, this proposal goes further than even the strong mayor powers given to Denver, and certainly much, much further than the strong mayor powers given to the mayor in Colorado Springs. And so to compare to those cities is really not apples to apples. This proposal goes significantly further, as has been laid out in several different places, but it's not an apples to apples comparison.
But number one, it's based on Colorado Springs. Number two, that number two, I think that there are a lot of iterations of mayor council form of government, as there are with a manager council form of government. And so a lot of these major cities, the mayor may not necessarily do the budget, but the mayor has veto authority. Further discussion.
Mayor,
Councilmember Coon.
can you name any mechanism that has been used within the 4 years between elections to hold an elected official on this body accountable to the voters?
Well, I think the difference would be that a city manager is not directly accountable to the voters. He is accountable to the city council. And at any day, 6 members of the city council can get away, can do away with the city manager, where the mayor is directly accountable to the people and not to the city council.
But so to clarify, in the time that you and I have both been elected officials in this city, nobody has been held directly accountable to the voters. The only mechanism the voters have are recall elections, and none of those have happened, even though people have been incredibly upset about decisions made by elected officials in this city. Whereas when there have been issues with the city manager, elected officials who are as accountable as the mayor to the people have gone to the city manager and directed the city manager to address those issues being raised by their constituents. I don't think that the structure of government that we currently have, nor anything in the petition that you put forward, makes it any easier for people to hold the mayor accountable than it is for council to hold the city manager accountable to our constituents. So I really fail to see how this increases accountability to the voters by vesting all of that authority for accountability in one person instead of across 10, 11, in this case, people.
Well, and I mentioned the vision. I mean, this council has established virtually no vision for um, um, the growth of the city in terms of economic development. I mean, it's amazing that the 51st largest city in America can't initiate an economic development plan, but we'll have a vote on that next week and we'll see what happens. The city manager unilaterally has the authority to move money around and could in fact do the economic study that initiates an economic development plan, but he's accountable to the council, and council would probably dismiss him if he in fact did that. But the powers of the city manager are pretty incredible, where the city manager can in fact establish whole departments without the consent of council, and in fact that was done by the previous the city manager, well, the last city manager, established the DEI office without the consent of council.
Mayor,
Questions are coming.
Mayor, we actually did vote on that DEI office, both in our budget and in a resolution.
Not when you simply announced it. Without
I believe there was a resolution that we voted on for the establishment of that office. But beyond that, I think we'll have the economic development conversation moving forward. I think it's been very clear in our conversations. There are numerous public records that this council supports developing a comprehensive economic development plan. We just don't support one that has a complete lack of details going into the conversation.
I differ with you on that.
Yeah.
I think
Mayor,
also has not moved forward, and we can just discuss this forever. But you know, there'll be a vote on this on the floor.
yeah, we certainly can, Mayor.
Mhm.
Thank you. God, I don't even know where to start with what was just said. So I'll begin with the fact that we had an opportunity to discuss the strong mayor form of government or charter review commission. We invited you, in fact, to do this when we suspected you were behind this initiative and you refused to do it. So that's on you. We actually had one of the people who worked on the Colorado Springs Strong Mayor Initiative come and kind of examine what was being proposed and talk about the process that the Springs used to change their form of government. And it was a multi-year process that, you know, had a thorough examination of budgetary impacts, legal impacts. And even then, they still had to make a lot of changes after the fact. So this is a very costly initiative that could potentially really be disruptive to city services. And we have not had any of that thorough investigation or analysis here. And I think that warrants a lot further discussion. Secondly, there was a very deceptive practice used to get this on the ballot, which we're already addressing. And that's something that, I think is just really disappointing. Because I think what this is going to do is make it more difficult in the future to have these kinds of conversations with the public because of the precedent that was set with how, frankly, just untransparent and really insulting to our residents this entire process has been. And third, any issues about vision or about coming together as a council, that rests with the mayor's office. That is your primary responsibility, is to get folks together and to establish some kind of consensus and common ground and move folks forward. You failed to do that. And I don't see how empowering your office is going to change that. In fact, it's just likely going to make it a hell of a lot worse. And we're going to see a lot more contention on this body in the future. So I think that what you're saying, there's just no basis for it. And I'm really disappointed, but I do appreciate you at least coming out on the record and saying that.
Well, I tell you what, if you want to have the debate for the mayor's race, we're going to have that, and I look forward to that. But I'm not going to, criticize you here for. Well, I'm just not going to do it.
Well, you just did. You threw all council under the bus.
I'm definitely going to do it when we're in a debate format, and I look forward to that.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about that too.
This is not that debate format. Further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please identify yourself.
Coombs,
Marcano,
Gardner,
Murillo,
Turinsky,
Lawson,
All those in opposition, Mayor.
Savonic.
Anyone else? Very well. Item number 5A will move forward. Item number 5B will move forward.
5B.
Item number 5B, single subject ballot initiative. Councilmember Gardner.
Thank you, Mayor. This is obviously pretty straightforward. There was a lawsuit filed today relating to the strong mayor proposal. And, the courts are obviously going to decide whether or not that violates single subject. But what this item is intending to do is clarify and make it abundantly clear to anyone, whether it's a council member, the mayor, or a citizen-led initiative, that single subject rules apply for anything brought forward in the city of Aurora.
Questions of the sponsor?
Mayor Zavonic.
Councilmember Zavonic.
So I agree with this proposal for citizen-led initiatives, but as somebody who's worked through the state process for initiatives on a number of occasions, I think that is I don't think that it has the everything behind it that it needs to make it functional. So, for example, my first question would be, who determines what the single subject is? Anybody?
City Attorney.
So, thank you, Mayor. This is Jack Bajork, Deputy City Attorney. The initial determination is made by the city clerk that it is a single subject. Then this ordinance provides the mechanism for challenging that determination.
And what is what is the final arbiter? Does it go to the Supreme Court the way that, because at the state level, as I'm sure you're aware, Jack, there is a title setting board comprised of 3 different people, one from the Attorney General's office, Secretary of State, and Ledge Council. Collectively, they make a determination of because this idea that it's really straightforward of what a single subject is or not, that is absolutely false. These go to the Supreme Court regularly. So I guess I'd want to know, what is the timeline? Who is the final arbiter of this? And again, I think that's a lot of power to rest in our city clerk. Well, I have a lot of confidence in Katie. For that person to get to determine the single subject and what it is that's a significant amount of power that rests in one person. And I don't care if they're elected or not.
This ordinance does contemplate a challenge of the city clerk's finding to a hearing official, and then that would always be subject to challenge in the state court system.
And are there timelines that are created in the ordinance?
The timelines are set in the ordinance for the city clerk's finding, as well as the hearing official. At that point, it reverts to the state timelines if somebody files a challenge in state court.
And are they consistent with the requirements that we have, given that we're in 3 different counties, and from an election standpoint, we have deadlines to get a citizen-led initiative on the ballot that also requires us to vote, which I think is a silly step, and I don't know if we can clean that up, that we have to vote to move a citizen-led initiative to the ballot, even though it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to be there.
So I think that would require a charter change. If I'm going by memory, I believe the referred matters are required to be referred by the city council.
Okay. I guess that's all I have.
Seeing none, is there opposition to moving 5C forward?
I just have a question.
Yeah, Councilmember Bergen.
Okay, so just along the lines of Councilmember Zvonik. So, and I think Jack, you said there would be a hearing if it's challenged to the city clerk. So is it the same as right now? I think we have like the 20-day period and then a 10-day period.
It's similar, but it's at the beginning of the process, and that's part of what this ordinance does. Is it moves that determination to the time to be made at the time that the petition is submitted for review by the city clerk, and then the city clerk has, I believe it's 5 days after that determination to make the finding of whether or not it meets the single subject requirement. So it's at the beginning of the process, unlike now where the challenges are being brought at the end.
Right, which I guess would make sense if it's at the beginning, so that if it's determined to not be single subject, then it would be basically decided at that point rather than having it go to the ballot potentially.
Jack?
I think that's an accurate statement, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Further discussion on item number 5C. Is there opposition to moving 5C forward? Seeing none, 5C will move forward. 5D, prohibiting the sale of cats and dogs in pet shops. Councilmember Jurinski.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this is something that you're all aware came to us. We were getting outside emails, and Councilmember Marcano came on as a co-sponsor. Councilmember Lawson also wanted to co-sponsor this. So it was kind of a group effort. And for me, our current animal shelter has had to stop taking in animals many times because the shelter is overwhelmed. Sometimes it is understaffed. And the fact that this ordinance just targets pet shops from selling dogs. I also found out that this doesn't currently affect any business in Aurora, and private breeders will still be allowed. And Councilmember Marcano, I don't know if you want to take it from there or turn it over to staff.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Councilmember Jurinski. Mayor, may I? Thank you. All right. Yeah, and thank you, Councilmember Jurinski, for reaching in, and also Councilmember Lawson for doing the same. I reached out to tax and licensing, because I remember when we were discussing the pit bull question a few years back, this resurfaced, and we had apparently previous councils had looked at this question, but didn't pass anything. So Trevor actually had pulled up the old ordinance and sent it over. And then I got word that Councilmember Jurinski was also interested in pursuing something here. So we signed on. And I got to say, I really like the way that this is drafted, because it's really going to put emphasis on adopting animals. I adopted 2 cats. I'm sure several of my colleagues have animals that they've adopted as well. And it's going to work hand in hand with animal rescues, in addition to our own pet shelter. So I'm very supportive of this. I hope council can jump in, because it won't currently impact any businesses here, and it'll ensure that we don't have puppy mills or kitten mills setting up shop in the city of Aurora in the future.
Further discussion?
Mayor.
Is there any opposition to moving 5D forward?
Mayor, Councilmember Lawson, I think.
Councilmember Lawson.
You're muted, Councilmember.
Councilmember Bergen had something to say.
Okay.
Councilmember Bergen.
Yeah, just a question. I'm good with this. But how do we actually, is there anything we could do to actually go after the puppy mills? Because I know this is regarding pet stores. Do puppy mills sell to private breeders, or is that separate?
So I'll turn it over to Anthony in a second to see what he knows on this. But my understanding of how this system works is the commercial breeding operations. Usually they're kind of more larger operations. And so it'd be relevant whether it was inside the city or not. And, the private breeders, those are small operations. And I think Anthony helped me out here in delineating that and what you know of as far as what's in the city and the regulations that go along with that, perhaps from the state.
Yeah, and we're actually really lucky in Colorado. We have a governing agency from the state level, PACFA, the Pet Animal Care Facility Act, that monitors. There's very few puppy mills that are going to be in the state of Colorado at all, much less in Aurora. You're going to find a lot of this in the Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Texas type thing. So this ordinance is going to make sure that the large retail stores that can pay the prices the mills want aren't bringing them up where foster-based rescues just aren't going to pay that kind of money because they're running on such slim margins to begin with. So while I can't tell you it'll 100% wipe it out, this is a good start in that direction.
Okay, so the state has a law against puppy mills. Is that what you said?
There's not a law, but we have an organization that monitors best they can for things like that. So they are civil only. So each animal control jurisdiction, like Aurora, Denver, will still do all the criminal parts. But they will stop. They'll make sure that people have, if they're a rescue or if they're a foster or if they're a mill, which wouldn't be allowed based on how many litters you can have in a year per pack for those kind of things. And that's what will be the difference with shutting down with this ordinance.
And my dog is, he's a rescue, so.
We're glad to hear that. And if you need another one, come see us.
Mayor, my hands full.
Further discussion?
Sundberg?
Councilmember Sundberg.
Trevor, I was curious when the last store in Aurora had puppies for sale. Was that shut down or?
Yeah, and there's a little bit of history there in the backup that we included on that. That was in March of 2020. That store is the only one I'm aware of in my time frame as manager of licensing, which is over 9 years, that we had that would be kind of fall under this ordinance. That store was shut down by the city for back taxes. We did do that action shortly after we had a situation with a puppy that had died of parvo, and enforcement action by Anthony's group. And so we thought that was time to kind of take full enforcement steps on that shop. It was had $80,000 in back taxes. Puppies, there was a lot of puppies that came out of that. Given the small size it was, I wasn't particularly impressed with the conditions that were there. Anthony and his team, I cannot give them enough credit with how well that went, how well organized they were, and how well they got them placed and quarantined and healthy again, that we were then able to get them to homes where we had to auction them due to legal requirements. But, when you did the auction, we saw that it was pretty much is either rescues or private buyers that were buying them to put them in their house. And so we were able to recoup the revenues on that. I will say there was also a situation that I dug up from about 2018 with that pet store where there was an investigative report on one of the news stations where there was a similar situation that they had sold a puppy that had passed away of parvo to a consumer there. And the investigative report indicated that there were ties to a puppy, I guess what we call a commercial breeding operation out of Kansas that had prior violations and sanctions from the USDA, but had still been operating. So kind of that similar patterns as to what, perhaps we're concerned about with this.
Thank you. I just want to point out, if I can, that I'm in support of this, and I always want to encourage adoption. We have 3 adopted dogs in our house currently. But I think it's commendable that the private sector had the ideology to take this on themselves without being told what to do. It's something the private sector, the private pet shops have done. on their own and found it a good idea without us telling them what to do. But I think it's good to have in place for the future.
Further questions or comments?
Mayor Murillo.
Councilmember Murillo.
Yeah, just for the clarification, this wouldn't impact, let's say, like if somebody's dog had a litter of puppies and they're like, they have a sign, you know, that they're selling puppies around the neighborhood. This wouldn't impact those people.
That's correct.
Okay, just I figured that was the case. I wasn't reading anything in there that would infringe on that, just for the public's knowledge. And then I guess another question on just the focus on cats and dogs. Is there a particular reason we're just focusing on cats and dogs as opposed to other animals that might be sold commercially and in poor conditions, similarly to dogs and cats?
Anthony, I don't know if you know kind of the background on that with, you know, as far as small pets or fish or things like that. I know that the kind of this effort and what the proponents had approached us with was focused on cats and dogs. I think, you know, given the larger animals and importance placed on behavior and conditions, that's kind of more around those reasons why that focus is a little more there, and it gets a little more complicated with the small animals, I'm assuming. Anthony, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And sheer volume, you just don't move as many rabbits as you're going to move cats. You don't move as many guinea pigs as you do dogs, those kind of things. And so we don't really have the mills out there that are producing these kind of things. We kind of have, like you just said, backyard litters when we have more of that than anything, because we've got really lucky that some of the animals we get out into the pet stores, like the Petco's, the PetSmarts in the local area, they're adopting our animals out to help us. And so we have the ability to have them altered before we send them. So we're perpetrating this system where we're doing responsible behavior because the animals are already spayed or neutered. So it's just been helpful that way.
Well,
Okay.
Further questions?
I didn't want to complicate it. This seems like the most feasible kind of way to move forward. But I mean, they had all that pet shop. I remember they had all kinds of sick, sad animals, not just cats and dogs. So the reason for my question.
Further questions or comments? Seeing none, is there any opposition from moving? Item number 5D forward. Seeing none, item 5D will move forward. Thanks, everybody.
Can we go to miscellaneous items, please? About miscellaneous items, I have two.
I'll address you.
Thanks. So this is for the city attorney's office. So the first one I want to find out, I understand that the mayor used to read decorum rules for public invited to be heard before every public invited to be heard. So I wanted to know if we could bring that back.
I don't remember doing that. I used to do that, or the mayor before me.
So Mayor Hogan, sorry, this is Jan Brussman.
Yeah.
This is Jan Brussman. Mayor Hogan used to do that, and Mayor Laguerre used to do that.
I don't think I'll just do it. I don't think that requires a rule change.
Okay, and then so my next question is, so I also found out that the city had a lawsuit filed against it today, and Dan, I would like to know if we've retained outside counsel to defend this, and if so, who?
And so it came in, we haven't been served yet. We have a copy, obviously. It's been in the news. We have a conversation tomorrow with Tom Snyder, who's at Kutak Rock.
Okay, do we have a maximum or budgeted amount for this to defend ourselves?
And again, this is our first initial meeting. We can set a budget for that. But we have, obviously, we saw it in the news today, so we haven't done that yet.
Okay, and then I guess the reason I'm concerned is there's a Colorado statute that says city resources cannot be spent to promote or defeat a ballot issue. Are you aware of that statute?
Yes, and we send out literature every year on that.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's all.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Night, y'all.